Y'all, I just found Draco Malfoy in a movie about Jesus. It has been years since I have watched the movie Risen because it came out in 2016. So I'm curious to see if my thoughts have changed, my views have changed. I've had a lot of people who I've talked to recently who either have never heard of the movie or have never seen it. I thought it would be fun with it being close to Easter to rewatch and just kind of see what my thoughts are, if they've changed, how biblically accurate it is. I've got my nice, delicious chai. I'm ready. Got some cats that hopefully are gonna cozy up with me while I enjoy this movie. The movie Risen is set in 33 AD, right after the crucifixion of Jesus, and it focuses around the resurrection of Christ. It's almost like a mystery how there's a Roman centurion who is the main character who is actually trying to find the body of Jesus that he thinks is still dead. He doesn't think he has come back to life. So he actually goes around and he interviews all the different disciples and interrogates them and is like, where did you put Jesus' body? You must have done something. Okay, now that I've rewatched the movie, let's talk about it. The cinematography, the music, the acting, the set, everything. I just really appreciate it. It's very well done. The acting is really beautiful because it's not over the top. There are just some really powerful moments where you just see it in the eyes of the actors. In a lot of movies now, it's so much about the action. It's all about the big explosions. And like with this story, you are like feeling it through this character of Flavius. There is a really cool moment that happens towards the end of the movie, which I will not give away. It is just, it is such a sweet moment that he has. You see his heart soften. I just think it's a really neat depiction of what Jesus does in our hearts. As you're watching this movie, they're depicting it as you don't really know what has happened to Jesus, because it could be that Jesus is still dead, his body is missing, or is he alive? Like, which is it? And so I think it's cool that you're seeing it through the eyes of the centurion, of trying to kind of find out, like, is Jesus really alive? Is he dead? Like, what's going on? Did the disciples take his body? So you're kind of along this journey with those disciples, which I think is a really cool take. So because it is a movie about AD 33, there is a lot of violence in it, some war scenes, and obviously the crucifixion scene is pretty graphic. So in terms of, young kids watching it, you kind of have to use discretion on that. At the same time, it is depicted as close to historically accurate as maybe I've seen a lot of movies other than maybe say Passion of the Christ. And so I just thought that they did that part really well. In terms of things that I would say that they were biblically accurate on, I was actually quite impressed by. Here's a list of some different things I found in the movie that were accurate because it was very uniquely done, and I thought it was a good depiction of those different scenes. An example that really stands out to me are really things around the crucifixion. That is probably one of my favorite things that they do in this really well, because they have quotations like Jesus saying, "It is finished." They have things like, "Surely this man was the Son of God." They have just like these small details throughout that I thought were really well done, that brings scripture into it without it being so over the top that it becomes cheesy. A beautiful moment that is also very true to scripture. You see Jesus restoring Peter. You're getting to see this picture of God's redemptive love, the heart of Jesus wanting to restore those who are out of relationship with him. It's so true to the text. I will also say one of my favorite scenes that you are seeing the nature and character of Jesus when he heals a man from leprosy. That part is just really cool because they don't have it be like CGI graphics of, you see this wound and these scars and all of a sudden like they heal while on camera. Like they do it in a way where it really just seems miraculous. And it's just really neat the way they depict it. And so I really appreciate that they actually went that route rather than doing something CGI, because I think it would have taken away from the emphasis pointing on it was Jesus who was doing the healing. Can we just give a shout out for Tom Felton? I mean, it is so great to watch him in a movie where he is not playing an evil character like in Harry Potter. I really appreciated Tom Felton in this movie because at one point you kind of feel like he's annoying, but then he ends up becoming a very pivotal character. It's just really neat. My favorite depiction of a character though, the disciple Bartholomew. I just love this character. I think he is so neat and unique. I think the first time I saw the movie, I was like, wow, they're making him look so dumb and super ridiculous. But it's so interesting because he just has so much joy following Jesus and seeing Jesus resurrected, being able to now tell people, specifically Clavius, about who Jesus is. And so I think that part is really cool. I think it could be a good movie for both Christians and non-Christians. So something that I think is also really interesting about this movie, they're really focusing so much on eyewitness accounts, which I think is an interesting perspective to portray in a movie. There is an author, J. Warner Wallace. He wrote the book Cold Case Christianity. If this is something you're even curious of, how did the disciples' eyewitness accounts make up what we now have in the New Testament, specifically Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? That particular book actually would be a really cool book to check out if you're wow, this movie was really interesting and I've never thought about eyewitness accounts before. That is a book I would highly recommend you check out because I think it can add some more detail to what you have maybe just watched if you have watched this movie. Something that I also found interesting this time watching it is just the significance of the character of Clavius, because he is a Roman centurion. Something that I never picked up on until this time watching it, having Clavius, this trained Roman soldier who is there to help the disciples get through things. You really can almost see this nature of God's sovereignty. Not something that is depicted in scripture, but very imaginative, very interesting portrayal. I just love that. I just thought it was great. There's also a really powerful scene that I think is really neat when you have Clavius, the tribune, who you see him praying to a Roman god, but I did not catch this the first time I saw this movie years ago or even recent times, but this time I was watching this particular scene with subtitles on, and I realized he is praying to Yahweh. And I thought that was incredibly powerful because you start to see this shift in his heart where, he's not totally convinced that this is actually legit and a real thing, but he's just you know what, let me just try this and let's just see what happens. And I think that that's also so much of what we do with God, right? We start to go, okay, God, if you give me this job, if you show me this thing, I will trust in you. I will believe in you. I think it's a very raw moment that we see with this character, but something I just kind of want to point out with that is that, when we want God to move, when we want God to act, we don't have to bargain with him. He genuinely has our best interest in mind. It may not always look like the outcome we want to experience, but he is still there. If you pray for something and it doesn't happen, that does not mean that God is not real. Sometimes I think we have that expectation, and so then we think, oh, well, God didn't do this thing, so of course he's not real. However, that is not the case. God just wants us. He wants our hearts. He wants to know us. God promises that he will be with us through all of the things that we deal with in life. It isn't dependent upon our faithfulness. It's about his faithfulness. He wants us to be faithful, but his goodness and righteousness is not based on the goodness that I bring. It's about the goodness that we see in Jesus. So overall, I would highly recommend this movie. It's biblically accurate. I think it portrays the characters really well. Cinematography, gorgeous. Acting, I just thought was very true to what the characters may have come across as, but also still giving some of that imaginative response while still delivering a very appealing movie. If you are not a Christian and you check this movie out, definitely comment. I would love to know what your perspective on this movie was. I would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and share them in comments section below. Also, take a second, hit the like button, as well as subscribe if you'd like to, but definitely hit like. Have a great day, enjoy the movie.